Has the fear of failure ever kept you from going after your next big idea? If so, you are definitely not alone. Today, we are going to bust the myth that failure is something you need to fear and free you up to get into action around those next big ideas or dreams. My guest today is not only one of my best friends, but a woman who knows a thing or two about failing forward. Francess is a fitness entrepreneur and gym owner who has an incredible story that I can't wait for you to hear. So let's do this. Welcome back. I feel like I am on a talk show. Those of you who are listening in podcast time can't see how cute we are, but this is my very first in-studio interview. And for those who have followed my social media for even 5 seconds, know that it would just be weird if I were interviewing Mary via Zoom. It just would be weird because we're pretty much attached at the hip and always together. So we'd probably be doing Zoom from different rooms of my house. This was just more convenient.
That would be funny.
So thanks for being here.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
So today is special for 2 reasons. Number one, of course, having my bestie sitting next to me. But second is it's actually launch day today. We're recording this on April 30th. I recorded 2 episodes. So if you hear another one that says this is being recorded on launch day, it's true. I recorded 2 today. And I thought, what a fun way to celebrate a project that has been on my heart for over 5 years, longer than I've actually known you.
Yeah.
Than to get to do it with one of my favorite people. So thanks.
And just to be clear, she didn't actually invite me. She basically just said, clear your schedule on Tuesday, April 30th, because you're coming. And I said, okay, Mom.
This isn't a question. So we are going to talk all about failure today. And that is, what more fun to talk about among friends than your biggest failures,
The
really.
ways in which you've fallen on your face?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that, so you have done a couple of talks recently. You did it for our Powerhouse Women tour event in Albuquerque. You did it for the I Start First event here in Phoenix. But this talk on failing forward. And that's one of the things I've always loved about your story is you're not afraid to share your hangups. You're not afraid to share the realness of the journey because there is so much gold in embracing our failures or what we perceive as failures. So for those who don't know you, as well as I know you, why don't you just take us back, share a little bit of your story and how failure has really brought you to where you are today.
To be clear, I haven't always been super comfortable sharing about my failures with anyone, just anyone. Obviously, like you said, you're one of my best friends, so it makes it a little easier to be an open book. But up until like the last month, 2 months till I made a very large life decision, I really haven't figured out a way to like package it up into this little box with a bow on it to be of value to other people. So very recently, as of yesterday, actually, I'm officially an ex-gym owner on to my next big adventure, which will be another gym owner within the next year. Mark my words, said it here.
You heard it here first,
You heard
folks.
it here first. I really didn't see how all the ways in which I've failed have led me to be the successful person that I am today. And I want to clarify that success doesn't have to mean just 1 or 2 things. Like I think we look at success and we see somebody who's wealthy or has it all together on the outside. And it's not. It doesn't have to be that way. It's very much so a mindset and where you are like personally with in between the ears. You know?
True.
So I recently asked for a buyout, if you didn't get that from not being a gym owner anymore, from a partnership that I've been in within the last 5 years. I owned a gym that was named CrossFit North Phoenix, and it just wasn't working for me for a multitude of different reasons. So I had to sit down and like really make the scary decision, with help, of course, to ask for that buyout, to leave this space that I'd been comfortable with, that I had built this community within, and say, this isn't working for me anymore. How do I get out of it? So within that, I felt like I had an out-of-body experience, really.
Yeah.
And I got to see just how everything that I have, quote unquote, failed at over the years had led me to be in that place at that exact time, to really think like, wow, like I've learned all of this stuff over the years without really even knowing it. And now I'm here.
Yeah.
And where I am right now is where I'm supposed to be. It's absolutely perfect timing.
So I love that, and so true, because I think one of the things about failure for me, the times that I've felt like I'm in that moment where really it's a failure to meet an expectation that I had. Like truly, if I look at what that failure was for me, it was I had an expectation of how something in my life would go. It didn't meet that. And in that moment, it sucks. Yeah. Like I know there are all the motivational quotes about how just fail forward, but no one likes to be there. It's not fun when you're in it. And I know you have had some of those moments in your journey where it probably didn't feel great at the moment, but you eventually do or can get to a point, if you're willing to do the work, where that failure doesn't feel like the negative impact on your ego or your soul that it can initially in that moment.
Well, and I think social media or movies or whatever you've watched throughout the course of your life paint it to be a different picture. Like the lesson isn't going to come 2 days later. It's not going to be this perfect, like somebody's going to knock on the door and hand you this, like, oh, here's why you need this and here's how it's going to get you to the next step. Like some of this stuff was 10 years ago. Like 31, I'm 31 now. Some of these things that have happened in my life were literally at 21. And I'm just now seeing how perfect it was that happened for me.
Yeah.
And I think the mindset for a lot of people is life is happening to me instead of life is happening for me. And that's the greatest lesson of all, is being able to really have that light bulb turn off and say, oh, that's exactly why that happened. And now I can see, like, this happened. Okay, then this led to this, and I really screwed that up. And I was friends with this person that I shouldn't have been friends with, and this door slammed in my face, and here's why.
Yeah. As you're talking about that, I had the visual of the Conair bus. I think we might need to share that story for people. But really, I think I'm going to tie it in quick with what you said to me this morning. So we were met at my house. We were getting ready to leave to come here. And you said, you looked at what a disaster my kitchen is right now, because we just traveled. We came back. It was launch day. I have not had time to clean. My husband is traveling for work. And you said, I think people would appreciate seeing behind the scenes. I think they would appreciate seeing some of the real side of what life looks like. It isn't all perfect on the surface. So I love when you share a little bit of like where this failing forward journey really did start for you. So I want you to tell that story and the Conair bus, because it makes me giggle every time.
So I moved to Arizona when I was 19. I moved here to live with my dad. I didn't have a great relationship with him, so I really wanted to explore more of that. And really I think I wanted to explore like the drinking buddy side of that, because that's really what he was to me. We attended sporting events galore. I think I went to like 40 Diamondbacks games the first year that I lived here. I was at like every home Suns game. Like that was our relationship in a nutshell. Unfortunately for me, that led me to getting a DUI like right when I turned 21. And that was back in 2009. So if you've lived in Arizona long enough, you know that getting a DUI back then was like suicide, really. Joe Arpaio was the sheriff, and he really wanted to make an example out of everyone. So at the time, being like dead center of that, it was the worst thing that it could have ever possibly happened to me. Not only did I get a DUI, I also got into a major car accident. So that just upped the ante of what my punishment was going to be. So fast forward through, I don't know, like 6 months of court cases, I was sentenced to some time in Tent City, and everybody who got a DUI back then had to go. It just, what the consequences were the time frame in which you were at Tent City for. So fast forward to that fateful day, you show up at the holding cells. The holding cells were at a completely different location than the actual tents. So we were bused to the actual tents in what I fondly refer to as the Conair bus.
Makes me giggle every time.
Because if you remember that movie, there was a bus, and it literally had seats that were caged in by a combination like plexiglass and metal. Just, I mean, to make sure you didn't like jump off the bus or something. They literally shut the doors on you. And that was just like a really profound moment for me, because I was one of the only females on the bus, and I got the distinct pleasure of sitting like right up front. And I just saw how people within that system react or act, really.
Yeah.
And guys within that system they like check their morals at the door. It's like a free for all. They can do whatever they want because they feel like they've already done the worst and the punishments are already there. So it's like every single guy that walked by made some sort of lewd, crude, or rude gesture. And one of them even like licked the entire length of plexiglass next to my face. And it wasn't Nicolas Cage. Unfortunately, like he wasn't there. I think that would have made it more fun. But it was just, it was a
so
really
uncomfortable to hear that part.
Really, honestly. And it was just like it was like an epiphany. Like if you continue to make decisions like this, and if this is what your life is going to consist of, this is what your life is going to continue to consist of.
Yeah.
So honestly, a lot of you listening are probably like, well, what's the great lesson in that? It's like, I'm not invincible, and there are serious consequences to my actions. And I think as teenagers, or even like in your 20s, you think you are invincible and that nothing bad can ever happen to you. And that right there was just a sign to me that, oh, well, life just got real.
Plot twist
For real. So 10 years later, it really came about. Like that was a huge turning point for me. And even though I may not have seen it back then, like it led me to here. It led me to this friendship. It led me to being a part of this community. So if that wouldn't have happened, where would I be 10 years from now?
Yeah, it's so true. And obviously there's so much more to your story and just to what has led you to this point. But for those who maybe they're feeling like they're more on the side of coming out of a failure, or they're in the midst of it, what were some of the things that helped you start to turn that story around in your own life?
I couldn't wallow. There was like no room for wallowing in the misery. Like, was I sad? Absolutely. Like, did I have to deal with this for the better part of 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Yes, because I mean, not only were the physical things there, like I had to have an interlock in my car. I had to pay all these fines and fees. I had to show up to court. Even I think it was like 4 years ago, I had to go back to court for it in order to get it expunged from my record because I didn't want that there. So it was like I had to deal with the consequences of this thing happening for years later. So I couldn't necessarily wallow. And within that, it was like putting just one foot in front of the other. Unfortunately, after I got the DUI, I owed a lot of money. So I made another decision that probably wasn't the best decision that I could have made. And I thought to myself, well, where could I go where I could make $25,000 like quickly? And the first thought that popped into my head was, go work at a strip club. So for the next 5 years, I waited tables at a local strip club. And I don't know if any of you all have been to a strip club before, but it's not housed with the brightest, most positive people. It's a lot of negativity. It's a lot of people looking for their next hit, whether that be alcohol, drugs, money. It's not like a poly-positive environment. So within that, like I think I had to really experience the depths of what rock bottom really meant.
Yeah.
And did I pay off my fines and fees rather quickly? Yes, but were there side effects of being in that environment? Absolutely. So I think the next major life move that I made was going back to school and surrounding myself with the people who were more on my level as far as what I wanted to accomplish, whether that was 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So I went back to ASU to pursue my degree in exercise and wellness, because one of the things that really helped me within this dark part of my life was finding a workout regime, and that was CrossFit. So as soon as I found CrossFit and really resonated with what it was doing for me on the positive side of things, I knew I wanted to be able to do that for other people in the future. So I found CrossFit. I pursued the degree in order to be like an exercise professional, and just continually surrounding myself with more of those type of people. It snowballed. Yeah. And then more of those people came into my life, and more and more and more. And now I'm like 180 degrees different. So one foot in front of the other, honestly.
Well, there's so much in that, because I love how you shared about turning the focus to someone else besides yourself. Yeah. Because I think when failure initially hits, it's our reaction, our natural reaction to want to console our own ego, and it hurts, and it isn't fun. And I've been there. I mean, just when life knocks you down, that's the first place you want to go, is like to defend or feel like you need to clean up your reputation or clean up people's perception of you. But you instead found a way to over time focus that attention on serving other people, which I think is key. And I don't know that you've ever really thought about it that way.
No.
I mean, even no matter how many times I've heard your story, I'm hearing that newly in this time. And, you know, having been a recipient of that, being a member at your gym, and just being a member of your girl gang, which we should probably share even just how this friendship came about, because a lot of people think that we have been friends for years, and it's really only been 2.
Yeah.
But I've gotten to see you grow and really reinvent what failure means for yourself in your life, even just in the 2 years since we've known one another.
Yeah. No, it has. It's been cool. No, I've never thought of it that way, but that's so true. The messaging around like how you make a bigger impact is who you can serve, because you've said it multiple times. It's not about you.
Yeah.
It's about who you can serve. So that's a good like 10x view of how to look at it, because I'm sure I didn't think of it at that time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's like the whole, what's the quote? When your mess becomes your message.
Yeah.
And again, that sounds great on social media. Like, I want to be clear. I'm one who totally has all the inspirational quotes saved. But taking a mess and turning it into a message, that's not just an overnight thing. It's messy. It's messy for a reason.
It's 10 years worth of a mess, you know? And even more so than that, I really have felt like I've clawed at my life for the last 25 years. So it's even more than that, because obviously the DUI wasn't the first thing, right? So it's been this whole learning experience of how to really reframe it, how to not wallow in my own misery, and how then I can take my experiences and give them out to other people who may be where I was 10 years ago, how to learn from them the lessons within that mess.
So would you say that having been through the journey that you've been through, this most recent life change, which I wouldn't say is a failure, but people could say that you leaving the gym and leaving what you built, certain people could put that label on it. You and I don't. But has it helped you reframe what the word failure means in your life?
100%. It's
and
really
how so?
I've honestly felt like I needed this last jump off to see how all of this has come together, because there have been people who have kind of questioned, like, oh my God, you have this business. It's making money. Like, what are you doing? Like, think of the impact in 10 years. You have a business that brings in residual income. Why are you walking away from that? And it's like, okay, well, you have to check in with yourself. Like, are you happy? And no, I wasn't happy, because I was spending so much time at this place and pouring into other people, and I was leaving and going home and I was unfulfilled. No one was pouring back into me. Now that was, I mean, just financially, that was emotionally, socially, mentally. So that's a big drain. That's a huge suck. And if you're not getting poured back into, like, you're not going to show up as your best self every day. So a lot of people have said, like, why not stay and make it work? And for me, that was a huge light bulb moment, because how many times have you heard that within, like, relationships?
Yeah.
And I'm talking, like, love relationships, but also friendships, but also, like, business partners and stuff like that. And it's like, how many times have we heard that and it's not worked? And you can see that 5 years later, even, I mean, 3 days later, it's like, why am I going to pour effort into something that's not serving me when I can go and make this bigger impact elsewhere? So taking that jump and really, like, leaping showed me how all the failures that I've committed over the last 25 years have served me instead of hindered me.
Yep.
And it really showed me the power of a girl gang, and, like, how my efforts over the last 3 to 5 years of pouring into myself, doing personal development, going to seminars, showing up at events has served me as well, because I jumped, and a lot of people can see this jump like off a cliff, or right, you're trying to make this leap from one side of the cliff to the other, and people see it as like falling, like, oh my God, you're going to go down and maybe you don't make it. I was instantly caught, right? It's a treacherous way down. I was instantly caught, and I was instantly, like, surrounded by all of the love and all of, like, the friendships that I've created over the last few years. And it was the right decision, and I knew it immediately. And that was obviously really good for the ego.
Yeah.
Because something like that can be terrifying, especially if you're doing it by yourself.
Yep. Well, I think you nailed it in that what prevents us from often making these leaps that we know we need to make or that we want to make is the fear of how that's going to turn out, the fear of possible failure, or however we define failure. So whether it be leaving a situation, like you said, where it would maybe be more comfortable, I'm like using air quotes because it wasn't comfortable.
But that's
it
right.
could have been more comfortable to stay, because at least it's, you know what the discomfort feels like, versus the discomfort of, I don't know what's on the other side of making that leap. Whether it be from moving away from a relationship or a business or something that you know you need to leave, or starting something new. So we'll transition kind of to talking about what stops people from jumping into the next decision that they need to make. Sometimes that means leaving what was good for what could be great.
Yeah.
And I think it's what we started talking about at the beginning is like this need for certainty. And unfortunately, in my experience, there's no certainty. When you take that leap, you have to just know that the certainty comes from knowing, number one, that you hopefully have a girl gang in your corner, people who are going to support you regardless of what happens, but just knowing that you're going to be okay regardless. So I'm curious, because again, we've only known each other for 2 years. A lot of people don't know that. I think our souls were friends long before that.
They were.
Once you find out someone else is like a fan of the Green Bay Packers, like I'm a Midwest girl, it's science. You're just immediately friends. That's how that works. Although it's funny because I'm from Green Bay and you're like a way bigger Packers fan than I am.
Yes, I am.
Note.
But we all have our own hobbies. It's okay.
So I'm curious to know, has fear of failure stopped you from doing things in the past?
100%. Absolutely. I'm not immune to that. Just because now I'm talking about how failure has served me, I have been paralyzed by it before.
Yeah.
Paralyzed by making that next move, because I feel like what you just touched on, like the devil we know is better than the devil we don't know. So even if you're uncomfortable in your comfort zone, it still takes a lot to move outside of that box.
Yeah.
So making any sort of move, I mean, if I didn't have the girl gang, let's just throw a hypothetical out there. If you weren't my friend, how long would I have stayed at the gym? Because I did get subtle, not so subtle, like pokes, like, okay, we've been talking about this now. You're clearly not happy. Like, what is the next best case? Like, how can you make a bigger impact and be happy? How can this be a win-win? So it's like, how long would I have stayed within that misery, or how long would I have tried to make it work? So it really does speak volumes to having people in your corner that know you and know your heart and know what you're capable of. Because I don't think if you didn't have people around you who are like, yeah, girl, like you look great in that outfit. You could do it. Like, go on with your bad self. Like, it's hard to sit with your own thoughts. It's hard to sit by yourself and make big decisions like that. So plug for the girl gang.
Heck yeah. And again, I think it's important for people to know that even we've had people comment on our friendship because we joke that now my husband and I have legally adopted Mary. So we're beyond friends. We're family. So if she calls me mom, that's why. But just how I've had so many women reach out, seeing what we've built really only in the last 2 years. And I did a couple episodes on, how do you find these women? How do you connect with people who are going to be that girl gang who will have your back no matter what? Or like I always like to say, I'm not the friend to tell your big ideas, even if it means leaving a business. I'm not the friend to tell that you feel pulled to do that unless you want to take action on it. I will be that person who's like, okay, hey, you keep talking about this. What are we doing? Like, what are we taking action on?
Truth.
So,
all the truth.
But it's important for women to know that even in my life, I built a business around helping women connect with their own girl gang, and mine has slowly built over the last 10 plus years. And I would even say it's really solidified to what people see now in the last 2 to 3 years, because I was transitioning out of a world that, I was in the construction industry, then I was in health and wellness. So I've made all these transitions that sometimes, unfortunately, my personal growth meant that certain people didn't come along to that next phase with me. And as a recovering people pleaser, that was tough. That was what kept me stuck for a long time, because I didn't want to feel like I was ever leaving someone behind. That felt like some kind of a failure to me. But realizing that the door is always open, and you opening yourself up to finding those people and realizing that you deserve that you can have it and that you deserve it, I think was what started to change the relationships in my life. And it sounds like the same for you too.
Yeah, I'm not a recovering people pleaser. I know that our
You're
stories,
so good for me.
Our stories are very different, and that is why I think this friendship works very well. So for me, like leaving the disgusting places that I was at, and I mean literally and figuratively, I was okay shedding those relationships because I knew that they weren't good for me.
Yep.
So it is hard to like stop talking to people or not give them a reason why, or just leave that friendship. But ultimately, I have found my people, like the people who are in my corner, the people who are always going to applaud what I'm doing or just be really honest with me. Like, that's not a great decision. Like the feedback that you want to accept, right?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I know in my life so you and I met through Lululemon. Mm-hmm. We didn't answer that question yet. So Mary worked part-time at Lululemon, and I was invited to come speak. And what a lot of people didn't know at Lululemon at the time, that was like one of the first talks that I had ever done. I was so nervous, so afraid. And it was right before the book came out. So you came into my life at such a pivotal time when I know you remember us going on that hike. And
sure do.
I was like, I think I want to host an event. You know, had no idea what it would turn into. But it really started by you making the first move and saying, hey, I think we should be friends. And that's how I operate too. Yeah. I have like no in between. It's like zero to best friends. There's nothing in between. So when you sent me that email, like, I think we should be friends, I was like, yeah, this is happening.
Yeah, no, I just knew. And it's funny, that story, I can remember that date like it was yesterday. Both meeting you and our first date. It sounds like we're in a relationship, but we're family.
It's fine.
Now.
We're just, mother-daughter. This is not a sister-wives thing.
I just knew like I needed to be friends with you because you honestly, you said our souls have been friends for a long time. Your personality, what you had to talk about, what you stood for that day, like did speak to my soul. And I hadn't had a lot of friendships like that at the time. I was just getting into the, like we were 2 years into the gym. So I had been making a lot of friendships in that way. But as far as like just realizing you needed to be in my life, I'll never forget going home and telling my roommate at the time, like all about you. Like, I just met this girl and her star's going to take off and I want my wagon hitched to it because I know it's going to be good for me. Like, and I don't want that to sound like, ooh, I'm just getting a free ride. Like, I just knew that you and I needed to be friends because I knew it was going to be a win-win for both of us. Like, it was going to better me and for whatever I could do for you. Like, and it's transitioned into that in like the most beautiful, organic way.
Yeah. And actually, I want to speak to another thing here because I know we're talking a little bit about now, like the power of a girl gang to help you move through that fear of failure or those moments where like you failed, like something has not gone the way that you wanted it to. But a lot of people have asked, okay, so how do I make friendships with people who are maybe playing at a higher level or who are on that rise like you were talking about? But the thing is, and I think you've watched me try to navigate this, which has been tough because I am a yes person. I genuinely love to connect, and I realize now it's to a point where I can't be that for everybody.
Yeah.
But you have been someone who you show up and you serve. You've never asked for something in return. You are always the person who is showing up and just doing what is needed without even having to ask. And that was really what solidified our friendship was, I have as a people pleaser, like this complex of, well, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to, so I just try to do a lot of things myself, which is like, just spoiler alert, that's not the way to grow a business or
that
just
leads to burnout real quick.
Oh my goodness, real quick.
Yeah.
But there are those people around me who have just, there's some that will show up and they'll be like, let me know what you need. I'm here. But to someone who has so much on their plate, sometimes it feels like more work to have to delegate. So the people who've shown up in my life and they're just like, without me even asking, they're like moving furniture at events, they're taking out the trash, with ever saying like, hey, I want to speak at your event, or like, how do I become your best friend? It really is, it's actions more than words. And that's one of the biggest things that I can say about building your own girl gang, finding those people that you want to learn from, that you want to be in association with, is how can you serve? How can you serve without expecting anything in return? And I mean, this is maybe for another podcast, but there's also the whole fact of you like physically saving my life on a few occasions. That'll be for another time, yes. Another day. But I wanted to kind of end on, it's funny, before we started filming this, I said, don't let me forget to share this story. And I didn't realize you don't even know about this.
I don't even know the story.
Okay. So I think I've shared this on like one other podcast. I think it was the Fitposium podcast with James. Love him. Love what he's doing. But it was funny because in this moment, I knew that this was going to become a story I would get to share in like a positive light later on. But when I was writing the book, one of the things that I really had to face was this fear of failure in the way of something not being up to my expectations. We were saying, again, before the mics turned on, I have really high standards. A little bit of a perfectionist tendency, yes, but I like to say I just have high standards. And I know when I'm maybe being too picky about those standards. I'm learning that done is really better than perfect. And that phrase, done is better than perfect, is what kept me writing the book and had me actually publish it. So the journey of writing for me was one of, I know this is never going to meet the impossibly high standards that I have, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. And it was like this breath of relief to finally just face that head on and do something that that fear of something not being perfect had stopped me from pretty much everything that I'd ever wanted to do. That's why this podcast did not launch 5 years ago.
Including this podcast.
This. But what happened, so on launch day, very much like today, everyone was so excited. They were sharing about it on Facebook and posting the link that they had bought their copy. And I was just like in heaven. It was like I'd never felt that kind of support for something that I had done. And it was also this cool moment that I was like, wow, I broke through so many of those fears of something being perfect. And then my editor / publisher called, and I picked up her call and expecting her to be like, wow, this is going so great. Like, congratulations. You know, we had hit, I think, number 2 in women in business on Amazon that day. But instead she said, Lindsay, I'm sick to my stomach.
Oh.
And I said, well, why? That sounds like a personal problem. Like, what's going on? Do you need like some Pepto-Bismol? What is it? And she goes, I just realized there's a typo on the cover. So it was like this moment where I had the opportunity, and I feel like this happened for a reason, just like we're talking about everything, all of these little opportunities. In that moment, I could have either defaulted to an old pattern, which is, oh my gosh, how embarrassing. What are people going to think? This is the worst thing that could happen. A little dramatic, right? Or I could say, well, that's funny, because that was my biggest fear. Putting something out before it was ready, before it was perfect. And you know what? The book still was making an impact.
Yeah.
So it was this moment where I got to choose, okay, am I going to have a sense of humor about this and take it as the lesson that it is, or almost it was like the validation that I had learned this lesson, that done really is better than perfect. Because we went back and we changed the typo. There's always those couple of people who like reach out to let you know they found a typo in your book. Yeah, don't be that person. Just don't. I don't need to know. We did fix that typo, and there was like one more on the inside I think my dad messaged me about. But after the fact, now the book is whatever, it doesn't have the typo on the cover, but I was able to just really sit back and really acknowledge myself for the growth, because I had like a whole chapter in the book on perfectionism and how done is better than perfect. I couldn't say that in one breath and then
freak out
just be so like beside myself and not allow, and this is maybe like the lesson to tie into failure, I could have let that steal all the joy from that launch day. I could have let it completely ruin this high that I felt seeing all of this support and all of this love for something that I did. And if I expanding it out even further, if I had really given into it, it could have prevented me from planning the first event, from launching a podcast. But instead, I just think of it now, there's like 200 copies that are a collector's edition. And they'll probably be worth at least 10 cents sometime in the future.
Totally.
And it was really poignant for me, because that was the kind of thing that always kept me from moving forward on the big ideas, the big dreams that I had.
Being paralyzed in that, and then it happened.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Basically you manifested it.
Probably I did. But it was the perfect lesson.
That's beautiful. It is. It's failing forward. Now that's happened. It's like if it ever happens again in book 2, I'm not saying she's releasing releasing another book, so don't get too excited. But she might. Who knows?
Dear Lord, no.
Dear Lord, no. I birthed one. That'll be it.
That's enough.
But it's the perfect lesson for you to say, okay, this already happened. I didn't die. The world didn't end.
Yep.
Move forward. Like, same. It could be a big failure. It could be a small failure. And that was one of my takeaways, right? Is like, in order to be comfortable with failure has to happen to you, whether that's unintentional, whether that's intentional. And if it's intentional, pick something that is small that you know you're not going to be good at or may not be good at. Maybe you will be good at it. The example I gave, what she is laughing at, is she has recently revealed to the world that she wants to be a backup hip hop dancer, which is amazing, right?
To be clear, a backup dancer.
Not
front and center.
Not front and center. That's something I know I would fail at because my hips just don't lie. And it's funny saying that out loud because whenever I've had the conversation with anybody about working at a strip club and they're like, "Oh, what'd you do?" Like the eyebrows go and they're really intrigued.
Cocktail waitress, wink, wink.
Yeah. I waited tables. They're like, "Oh, is that
code
for you were really a dancer?" And I was like, no, seriously, like watch these hips. They don't lie.
Those finger guns, though.
The finger guns don't lie either. But it's like, it's funny because that could be considered a huge failure. It's not like everyone listening is going to go now get a job at a strip club. But you can pick things that are small. You can pick things that you may want to learn and that you're too scared to because you think that you might not be good at them. And that's the beauty in it. You have to continue to do those things in order to know and maybe fail at those things in order, again, to know.
Yeah. And I think to tie it all together with a pretty little bow is the power of having women in your corner who are going to be there for you. And as we always say, we're not meant to do this alone, but the reason being is because our tolerance for discomfort and fear and the what ifs is so much higher as a group. So if you are not already plugged in, I will continue to say it until I'm blue in the face. You want to be a part of this girl gang. Come to an event, plug in online if you're not able to fly to Phoenix and join us in September. But it is up to you to put yourself in community with women who are having the kind of conversations that you want to have. And if we can ever do anything to support you in that journey, I mean, we're not that big time yet. We still do all of our own social media. We're super accessible. So reach out because there are people who genuinely want to see you succeed and who genuinely want to support you, but you have to make the first move.
And you have to know that you belong in the room. Like, that's a big thing, too. You deserve to be there. You deserve to be at the table, regardless of what you've been through, regardless of who's told you otherwise. Know that you deserve to be there.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, 100%. Wouldn't have missed it.
Now let's go drink some champagne.
Deal.